Hello guys, welcome to a new video here in JS Education. My name is Carlos Santana and this is the video number 55 for the course Developing a Headless CMS with TypeScript and GraphQL. So let's start. Okay, so in the previous video I showed you a way to do theming. In this video we are going to improve by a lot the way we are doing theming. So I had a discussion with Emmanuel, which is a guy that helped me to develop this project, and we decided to change a little bit the approach of the theming system we have. So instead of having like variables for each element like background color, border color, or color, for example, instead of creating variables for each prop, we are going to create general palette variables or color variables, and in the logic of the styling, in this case their button or any component, you decide which color you are going to apply. So in this way, our idea is to offer you a style guide using our UI kit. So at the end, the idea of this project is basically you can pull this UI kit and basically use it in your project with the Content API brand colors, or even you can extend it in an easier way. So okay, let's start, and I'm going to explain you all the changes I did. Okay, so the first thing is on the package. Basically the first change is to bump this version to 5.19. Also, I move some dependencies that were on the dependencies that must be on the dependencies, for example, jest. So this needs to be moved after Husky, and then also this Prism GIS needs to be moved after Prettier, and finally Webpack. Oops. Should be right here. Perfect. After this, you just execute npm install, and that should be all. And also, oh wait, I forgot something. So remember that on previous videos I told you that I'm going to move utils and core to a new package I created called lib. So now I have that package and it's on version 1.02. So now we can do an npm install. Okay, so the first thing is we need to do is go into sandbox app.tsx, and in here we need to add memo. I think I need to reinstall some packages because I stopped the installation at the beginning and probably that causes some problems. Okay, so we need to include memo there, memo. We need to change these buttons, data buttons for this, buttons and code block. And I'm going to create a variable called components to render, where we can like spread the buttons we want to render, but also this is going to help us, for example, if we want to include another components like alerts, if we have it. So you just spread those alerts here as well. So this is going to help us to put all our components that we want to render in this array, and that's going to simplify a lot of things. Okay, so after this you need to go here and we are going to change this use effect. So instead of running this on the component did mount or the equivalent for that, we are going to listen for the dependency show code, and if it's higher, bigger or equals to 0, then we execute Prism and highlight all the code. Otherwise we don't do that. And this is because I'm going to create a component inside here called code block, which needs to be memoized, so we pass memo. Basically this code is exactly the same we have here to render the buttons, I'm just abstracting that into a component in order to be able to render more components in an easier way. So basically, you need to remove all of this, all the buttons and the icon. And instead, we are going to render our components to render that map. And then we grab all the props and the index. And basically, we just render code block and we just pass all the props. So this is going to be way easier to control and to maintain in the future. Okay, so now let's go to the data buttons. And in here, we need to remove this part. Also, you need to remove this interface. We're going to move that interface to a different place. And change also name. The name is going to be code block now. Also, these buttons are going to be exported directly, and it's going to be code block. And we are going to create these types later, but now you can remove at the end the export default. We don't need it anymore. After this, you create an index TS where we are going to export all the buttons and the types, and the last file should be types.ts, which is this one. So this is the same interface that we had before. I just rename it. Okay, so now let's go to source, components, button style. So in here, we're going to change a lot of things. And I hope that my explanation makes sense. Otherwise, if you have any question, remember that you always can access or join our Slack community. So basically, the first thing is to change this B function. And we are going to get class, this function get class, I'm going to move it to our utils. So basically you can remove it from here. The only difference is that if you see here, because I am the same context or the same page, I'm directly past this. But now because I'm moving this get class to a different file, now I need to pass this as the first parameter, right? Because we don't have access in the other side. So is that also, I want to explain you something. So in this function get button color styles, if you see here the way we are building, the way we were building the variables, the CSS variables is like this: base class name, in this case button, dash color type, which can be primary, secondary, warning, etc. Dash outline it if has it, dash color, right? So something like this: primary dash, button dash primary dot color, and also button dot primary dot background color, border color, etc. So this approach is a little bit hard to maintain because basically you need to build or you need to create each variable for each prop, which makes this really hard to maintain. And in here, that's the discussion I had with Emmanuel to change this approach for an easiest one. So I'm going to change all of this. So basically I'm going to remove all this function. And I just want that keep in your mind this variable, button primary color and button primary background color, or background OBG. So the new function is going to be called getColors. And we are also going to receive color type and variant. Here's the difference. We are going to extract from the variables that we are getting from CSS variables, passing the color type. We are getting 4 main colors: the dark color, the main color, light color, and contrast test color. And based on that, we need to apply some logic in our code, in this part of the code, to determine which color we are going to apply to each CSS prop, instead of creating a variable for each prop. Okay, if that doesn't make sense, let's write some CSS here. So for example, I have these three props: color. Here I'm applying some logic. For example, if the color type is equals to light, I use the contrast test, otherwise the color that I'm defined here, which also has another conditional. If it's outlined, uses main, otherwise contrast test. And the background color, if it's outlined, the background color is transparent, otherwise it's the main color, right? Now, I'm going to paste some code here that I need to remove or clean up a little bit. So basically, all of this needs to go. Also this one. Okay. So in here, we do the same on the hover. If the color type is linked, this is a special color, use light, otherwise contrast test. The background color uses dark on the hover. And also if it's outlined, we add a border color, otherwise we don't add it. And finally, after this hover, we apply the A and we remove this part. So basically the same, right? So instead of creating, do you remember the variable primary, button primary color? Instead of creating a variable for each prop, now we apply some logic to define which color we want, right? And this is going to have a variable name inside. I'm going to show you that later, but this is the main change or the major change of this system, theming system, that now we are going to work only with basic colors or basic palette instead of having like a variable for each prop. And now we need to fix our getClass function. So as I told you before, of course I need to add the code for include this one, but we need to pass first the base class name. Also this function now is gonna be called getColors. And in all the get classes or get class functions, we need to pass this. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's like this. I think that's the last one. And this font weight is going to be now semi-bold. And also we are going to change the name of our style components. So normally the standard is to use style as a prefix. So this button base is going to be now style button. And this link button base is going to be style link button. Now we go to the button component. Close all of this. And I'm going to change this, importing a style button and a style link button. We need to change, as I mentioned before, I think 3 videos ago, I created a new repository called lib where I'm going to put all the utils and the core functions. So now instead of using content /utils, now it's /lib. Also here on the default values, we are going to use the types. Instead of light directly, we use color.light, so it's more standard. The size medium, and the variant contained, variant.contain. Okay, and now we need to add the color to generate the class. And finally, we need to rename our style link button and our styled button, just like that. Okay, now let's go to the icon.tsx, and also we need to change this for lib. Okay, now you need to go to theme, and we are going to create the file colors.ts. And before I continue, I want to show you a website. So this website basically gives you a name for each color you put in here. If you put an hexadecimal here, or if you select any color, you see that it's generating a name, right? So this is not like a random name. This is not like something that changes all the time. So basically, if you specify the same hexadecimal all the time, it's going to give you always the same name. So I really like this site because you can get tons of names for colors and for variations and intensities, and those names are not going to change. So based on that, I built my palette colors with named colors. So it's all of this. So basically those are all my colors. Of course, I get it from that website. If you need to add more colors, you can just paste it there and get the actual name and add it to this list. But for now, those are the colors I'm going to use in my theming. Okay, so now let's go to Css Variables. And before, or palettes, if you see, were like danger, dark, info, etc., and then all the props here. And then we have white, red A, red B, red C. And this is really hard to maintain and to understand, because how do you remember which color is red A, right? It's so hard. So it's easier to know like colors with names. So basically all of this code, if you see, is a lot, is very useless and it's hard to maintain. So we are going to get rid of all of this. And I'm going to import this for each function from content pi lib and this palette. And all of this code is gonna be reduced for only this, where basically we create a new object variables. We call the palette passing light. This can be light or dark. And this for each, you can pass an object or an array. And if it's an object, it's going to loop over the keys directly. You don't need to do object.keys and then another for each. So that's pretty cool. And we are going to build, based on the palette, all the variables that we are going to use. And those variables are the ones we are going to use in our button styled. And that's how we grab them: dark, main, light, and contrast test, for example. And we use it like with bar dash dash, right? Now let's go to our palette, where we need to remove all this. So this was the approach we had before with the intensities. But what's the wrong part with this? Or what is the bad part? So for example, let's imagine you want to inject another blue here. So what you need to do is basically put the color here. Something like that. And then you need to manually rename all the other positions in order to keep the order, right? So this is very hard to maintain, basically. And this is almost impossible to maintain. So that's why this is gonna be simplified. Well, it's going to have a different approach. So basically we're going to remove all of this. We just need to import our palette styles and the colors we created. So the first thing is to extract all our colors with the structuring. So this is the way I'm extracting all of them. And now we are going to create the palette function, which is going to have this assign color function or helper, where basically we are, I don't know why I'm getting this. Okay, I need to change the palette type first, but whatever. If you see this function assign color, basically I'm passing color A and color B. And basically I'm asking if the style is light, pass color A, otherwise color B. So those are gonna be your colors. Well, the background paper and default is just the default colors we have. And the first column or the first parameter is for the light version. So in this case, I pass white, or in the dark mode, I'm going to pass black. So if you notice, all the right side is black because for now it's just a color that I'm going to put in there to fill the colors. But at some point, I'm going to define the exact colors we need for the dark theming. But for now, for example, for primary, here we define all alternative text, contrast text, dark, light, and main. And then we assign, for example, for the contrast, we assign for the light white, for the dark black. For the dark prop here, we assign for light theming cerulean, and for the dark theming black, or lighter cerulean or black, whatever. And we do this with all of the colors: secondary, info, success, warning, danger, dark, like, and link. So this function is it's like a switcher between light and dark mode. So now you need to go to the theme, and instead of having this get button colors bars, we're going to remove that. We are going to, before we have the approach of having the style light and dark and then separate by component. But this doesn't make sense now because our approach is now to simplify this to be only a simple palette. So now our style is going to be light dark. I'm passing palette light or palette dark, just like that. Now let's go to the utils. And this function, we don't need it anymore. The get buttons color bars. Also, you don't need all of this. You just need the style. And we are going to move the get class function we had before. And as I told you, the first parameter should be the base class name. And the only thing we need to do in here is to pass this second parameter as true on the get CSS bars, because basically our variables are gonna be assignations. So for example, when you have assignation, you just pass the variable. When you are going to use the variable, you just call it with bar. So for instance, if you want to declare -- primary - main equals to some color, that's an assignation. If you want to use that color, then you do bar -- primary - main, right? So that's the difference. That's the difference. When it's an assignation, is this. When it's not an assignation, basically you just use it there. So that's how it works. And those are the only changes we need to do on utils. And now let's go to types palette. And we are going to get rid of all of this, the color intensity, button colors, palette, button palette. We don't need all of this. Instead, we are going to have just type colors, alternative, contrast, test, dark, light, and main. And then another one for the background. And then we are going to have our type palette, which is gonna be like this. Background is gonna be background, and then primary, secondary, info, sources, warning, danger, dark, light, and link is gonna be colors. And now on the theme type, you remove this button palette, and we just need the type palette. Basically, we are going to simplify. Instead of passing the component button, we just pass the palette. And that's it. So let's test our new theming system to see if everything works fine. So basically, if you see, we are still having the same result with the colors. But the difference now is that our dark mode works. So now all the colors are black. Do you remember that I put black on all of them? So this is just to test, but now we can switch between light mode and dark mode. One thing I want you to see is the variables. So if you go to the body, you will see that now all the variables we have are here and are only colors or palette colors. This is our primary dash alternative text, contrast test, dark, light, main, and the same for secondary, info, success, warning, danger, dark, light, and link. So that's the only thing we need to do. And now in the button, when you have a button here, you see that you have a class button primary, and then you pass the color is gonna be primary dot contrast test, and the background color is gonna be primary dash main, and that's it. And then for the outline it, basically the background color is transparent, and the color becomes our main, right? Instead of the contrast test. And now if you force the hover, in the hover you have now the contrast test. So that's how you play with the colors in the logic of your, when you are styling your component, right? So if you notice, we don't need to create tons of variables for each prop, CSS prop for each component or each element to make it work. We just need to define a palette color, that's it. And based on that, you use it however you want. So that's the idea of this UI kit. We want to create a style guide for you guys, where you can use this in your projects using Content PI brand colors. And we are building this from scratch, and we want to be these colors or identity. And then you can use it, you can extend it, and that's the idea, basically, to share all this with you guys. So that's it for this video. I don't want to make it any longer. I hope you like it. Remember that if you still have any question, you can join our Slack community. The link is on the description. And that's it. Just share this video with your friends, subscribe to this new channel. That's it. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video. Bye.